Rolling Able for the pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for coming, for being able to make it for this out-of-cycle special meeting. We have no scheduled audiences to the public, and no one has asked to make a comment on items that are not on the agenda. So we'll jump right into the report of the secretary. May I please have a motion for approval of the minutes of the last meeting?
I move we approve the minutes of the regular meeting of Wednesday, August 5th, 2020.
Second.
Is that Paul?
That was me.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, anybody have any comments or corrections?
Only one, and then my computer died when I was reading it. It was on page 3. It says, Mr. Scully wished to, I think it should be wished.
Wished. Yeah, that makes sense.
And
Catch that, Elaine?
I know, I'm sorry.
So page 3, the last paragraph that starts with the words Mr. Scully,
Yes.
wished in the past tense.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Sure.
And that was as far as I got at home, so.
Anyway, there's an awful lot of information in these minutes.
Yes,
This is
these
a
are
lot.
long. I was like,
Yeah.
no.
The paragraph before that one, I think that's supposed to say, Mr. Coverly reported the middle school and high school will start at
Yes.
7:30
Yes.
instead of with.
Yes.
Yeah.
Catch.
And maybe you take out the A before 30 to 40.
Oh, right.
In that same paragraph.
By about
Yeah.
30 to 40 minutes instead of A, 30 to 40 minutes. Same sentence.
Third line, yeah.
Elaine,
I don't know how well
Same
Elaine can
sentence.
hear us from over
take
there.
out the A before 30 to 40 minutes. Okay. Third line. Yep.
The second paragraph on page 3 reads a little funny, I think. Starting with Mr. Bourbon reported for MMS 2 learning programs will be offered. Maybe put a period after offered and start a new sentence. One would be a full remote option for those who do not feel comfortable attending in person. Eliminate the period and put and lowercase d. The second option would be ...
I admittedly didn't have a ton of time to look at this, I apologize.
My computer dies in the span of a couple hours, so.
That's a lot, Elaine.
You had a lot on this one for sure.
That's a lot of information covered and a lot of people talking for a really long time. I
Yeah.
can't believe you caught as much as you did.
I know. On page 4, where it's next to 2, proposed change, it said, it's the second sentence. He stated the staff would need the extra 4 days to prepare for the remote learning and to under. I'm not sure what's the,
Possibly understand.
yeah, or to implement or something. But to under doesn't.
I think that was intended to be understand.
What page is it?
This is page 4.
Page 4, I got it.
Paragraph number 2, proposed change. The second sentence, he stated the staff need the extra 4 days to prepare for the workload learning and to understand, presumably? The safety protocols we put in place?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, understand. Good catch.
Caverly stated, comma, though we are still working through the details, but there may be. Maybe Mr. Caverly stated, although we are still working through the details, there may be. What do you think?
So although.
Or take out the
but.
comma after stated, Mr. Caverly stated that we are still working through the details, but there may be, or take out but. What do you think?
Yeah.
And what we're.
Take out but.
You could almost take out the whole, though we were still working through the details.
Mr. Caverly stated, how about we are still working through the details? Mr. Caverly stated that we are still working through the details. Take out but, just take out but.
Yeah.
You see it?
So take out.
Take out where it says, Mr. Caverly stated that we are still working through the details. Instead of but there may be, just take out the but.
Okay, and keep the, okay. Okay.
I mean, but the big idea there is that depending on like the staffing needs when it comes to the federal programming, there may be a teacher who teaches a special ed class that may be forced to go remote due to health concerns
Sure.
or childcare issues. So, yep.
All right. Anything else? Good. In that case, all in favor? That is 6-0. Thank you. That moves us to the report of the chair. So opening day. So what has happened traditionally, those board members that are able to attend opening day when it's done live, which we typically, until now, has been done, are able to sit on the stage in the auditorium, and we sort of divide up the list of new hires, and we each take a turn at the podium, those who want to, and introduce yourself and then introduce your section of the new hires to the rest of the audience. We can't do that this year because that's too many people in the auditorium. So I believe what's been proposed is that we'll do it remotely.
Yes.
Each building will have their own session, and the suggestion for this activity is that board members that are willing to record themselves reading the introductions of the new hires that they're assigned, and then submitting those recordings, and I don't know.
They would all go to Elaine.
All go to
And then
Elaine.
Jeremy Poole will put it together for us for a presentation that we showed at all the buildings on that Monday morning.
Right. Who's game?
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Everybody in?
It's better for me,
So-
isn't it? People-
So just recording, give a link to like the Zoom recording, or actual, you want the actual recording?
I'm guessing the links will be fine.
That might be less, yeah,
Yep.
easier to email.
Yep.
Yeah.
I missed.
How do
What
you
was
do
the
it?
question?
I don't know
Yeah.
how to do it.
Well, you can record yourself. You can do a little recording on Zoom of just yourself. It's really easy.
Okay.
If you've been Zooming, then you just start a meeting, but it's just you, and you hit record. So it's actually super easy.
Okay.
And then in your Zoom, you'll go to your recordings, and it'll be there shortly thereafter. And then you can just give a link. There's a way to copy, link to the recording that you can send.
Okay.
Will it be presented? Like, do we do
I can
audio and
send you
video? or
versions.
Yes,
Yeah.
please. Audio,
did
video.
it.
Audio and
Yes.
video?
Yeah, that would be
Yeah, you
great.
did.
And you can just do it on your phone also if you wanted to, just videotape yourself on your
Right,
phone
right,
and send
right.
that in as well too. That's, however, whatever works. Jeremy Poole will take all that information together and kind of space it out, some blockers in it, which would be great.
Yeah.
And then, so that video will include, I'll have to do a short opening address. I'm assuming you're going to do
Yes.
a short opening address as well. We'll do the five new schools hires across the district. And then we also have, I think there's 2 staff members who have the 25-year service awards that we'll give out at the table. So that will all be done virtually. And so that they'll, the staff will kind of come in and, they'll have that video to be able to show us. It's going to probably be about 45 minutes by the time it's all said and done.
Now, I think it was last year, for the first time, we added the practice of reading out the names of the ed techs and new hires as well.
That's correct. That's correct.
So there's 2, 4, 6, 8, 6, 14, and
There's a lot.
17.
There's not a lack of content.
There's 20 new hires at the teacher level. And 5 of you would be 4-ish each, We can figure out amongst ourselves how you want to divvy up the list, but we should make it flow in such a way that it goes from school to school.
Right.
You may just want to assign a school to each person.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
it might be
You know,
easier.
Then,
That
you
might
don't
be
take yourself
easy
out of
to
it, then you
say.
can just do your
Yeah.
address, and then each person can do their own school.
So the first, the Director of Special Services, the elementary-based social worker, and then Marshall High School, that's 4.
Yep.
So who wants to grab those 4?
I'll take
All
those.
right, that's Jen. Excellent. The next thing we have is the Marshwood Middle School, which is 2, and then the Great Works School, which is 8.
Do the next 4.
Okay, so why don't we have Matt do the Marshwood Middle School and the first 2 of the Great Works School. And there's 6. Why don't we have, Matt, would you mind taking the first 3 of the middle school? I'm thinking,
I will
if
take
we
whatever's
could do
needed.
5 and give the next person 5, then I think that finishes up the middle school. Because I think somebody, one of the 5 of you want to take the ed text, which is not reading bios, but it is reading the names.
Man.
I'll finish up the other half of whatever he does, so
All
someone
right, so
give
Paul will
us.
take the last 5 of the...
Maybe Matt and I will work it together and do a socially distanced draft.
Good.
Good call, Paul. Good call.
I'll do Central.
All right, that leaves actually Central and Elliott is 3 and 3. And then, you take the ed text?
Sure. Is there anything to say except their names?
Name and position and school.
Oh,
Okay.
sure.
You don't have to read the notes subject to change with a base part of it.
Oh, yeah, wait, what did you just say? So we're not reading what's here?
So, yes, you are.
Okay,
So-
okay.
So for the teacher hires, read the bios.
Yes, okay.
The last thing is the list of ed texts, which still.
Oh, right.
Bios.
I'm imagining those are by school too.
Yeah. Yeah, do we want to read those with the school they go to, or do we
Yeah.
want to read them separately? Like,
I think we've done it separately in the past. I don't think we have to, but
So
whatever
the
is fine.
school groups are, so is it the whole district that's participating on Monday morning together?
Yeah, well, not together. But
Okay.
They're going to, each building will get the video, show it, individually as a school. So they'll probably have, rather than having 250 people, there'll be 50 people at each building.
I see.
Lots
So
of-
they're it's separate. The
Yeah.
schools are separate?
Yes.
Mhm.
Wait, when?
Yep. So,
Oh, it's pre-recorded.
So are we going to break it up,
What do we need to have?
teachers and then techs? Are we going to break it up by building, or is it going to kind of be a combination of all of that? So I just want to give Jeremy a sense of how we want, once he gets the film clips, how do we want him to break that up?
I feel like it'd be so much easier by school.
so lump
I feel like it makes sense.
the ed
Yeah.
text in with the,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
with the
we can
ed
do that.
text
Like
with
add the
school
ed
that
text
they
for that
go
school to the person who's doing that
Mhm.
school.
That's a good call.
And
Yeah,
if
'cause then
there's
it's like
not
one
that
That's
many
easier for me to,
give
can
me
I have Jeremy say
elementary
Marshall Middle
school,
School?
Like,
and
yes,
then-
essential in their ed
Exactly.
text, and give me Elliot and those ed
Good
texts.
so there are
choreography,
no
so-
new ed tech hires for those
I've been
first
doing a
3
lot of
categories. So
recordings
let-
lately. It's so much easier.
So would it be me and, like, Elliot and the ed techs, and Lisa gets central and the ed text?
Yeah, let's do it this way.
Yeah, okay.
Let me revisit this, because Jen wound up with only 4 to start. If we give Jen those first 4 plus the middle school,
Yep.
right? That's 6 bios to read. There are no ed techs associated with the middle school.
Okay.
So Matt and
For
I
the high
divide up
school.
what he works.
Oh, I'm sorry, you have 1 for high school, so you have to add in your high school ed
Okay.
tech. Plus ed tech. Okay. And now that leaves us with 8 bios for the Great Works School,
So Matt and I each do 4 of those and the.
and then there's 5 ed techs as well.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, okay, so Great Works School will be Matt and Paul.
We do the first
Okay,
4
so
and
you
the
do the
first
first
3 in
4.
text?
Yeah, you do 4 and 3 and then I'll do 4.
Perfect.
And what are these due by?
If you can get those to us like Friday afternoon,
Yep.
Saturday morning to Elaine, and then Elaine can get those to Jeremy, that would be fantastic.
Where do you have that list? I don't have that.
Yeah. So it's CEN, that's central, I guess, right?
Yes, correct.
So I'm
So
just
then where we land
gonna,
with-
I'll just add those to mine then.
You have the 3 district-wide positions?
So we landed with 3 central school and 3 ed tech central school for Lisa?
Yep.
And Sue, all you wound up with is 3 Elliott and 3?
Oh,
What about
Well,
the,
I can take some more if someone wants.
what about the special services? Was that on somebody's list?
Yes.
That's at the top.
Okay.
Yeah, that was on
Well,
Jen's
you
list.
could give me the special services and the elementary school-based social worker, and that would take a couple off of
It doesn't
hers.
bother me to do it.
Just remember, if you're doing 2 different schools, that's 2 different recordings.
Yep.
So,
Okay.
right, so like the less schools that you have involved, probably the easier it'll be, just from a technical standpoint.
Well, if I figure out how to do one, I'll figure out how to do 2. It's
Yeah.
figuring out.
stop
I did it
recording,
for
you
graduation,
start.
I can probably do it for this.
That's right, you did do it for graduation.
And you don't even need to start a new meeting, Sue. You can just start and stop that first recording and then do the next one,
Yeah.
I think, right?
Yes.
I think it records 2 separate sections
Yes.
of the same
Yeah.
meeting, but it's still 2 separate
We'll do
recordings.
dramatic pauses, change the camera angle,
Change
the
the background.
Change your-
Special background.
Joe, do you mind if I just quickly share some of the other videos that we're going to?
Please, go right ahead.
Yeah, so that week as well, we're also going to have our district nurses are going to provide about an hour, 15 minutes, or an hour and a half worth of training that they're going to create these videos that will be shown to the district staffs, again, by building, talking about, hand sanitation, talking about cleaning, talking about protocols, talking about, the isolation room. Also going to have our custodial staffs and do the same thing about cleaning in particular. And then we have 2 sessions, and it will be either an hour to an hour and a half, but it will be, Sweetser will be coming in and doing some training around just identifying where people are with the pandemic circle right now, and then also just taking that and applying to like what to expect when kids come back to the classroom, maybe struggling with some mental health issues or some anxiety or stress around returning to school. So we'll do some training around that as well. In addition, Sweetser is going to continue over the course of the year providing a 2-week check-in for staff. That they just need to a chance to a place to process. Then Maggie Norbert, who's kind of the clinical psychologist or is clinical social worker, who works with them, will provide the service for us.
That's
every year.
great. I love to hear
Yeah.
that.
That is awesome. Okay, so we're all clear on who's doing what?
Yep.
We are.
Thank you very
And we're
much.
sending those recordings to
Elaine.
To Elaine.
Elaine. Okay,
Yes,
got
please.
it.
Yes, thank you.
By Friday.
Please.
Go ahead, Fred. That's the 28th, is it not? Correct. Yeah. Okay, excellent. That's it for the report for the chair. John, over to you.
Okay. Yes, thank you very much. As you know, in order to have our reentry plan be performed and implemented the way that we had hoped to, it was going to require us hiring a number of staff members, particularly at the elementary schools, and then also some of the different buildings depending on some of the leave issues. So just so people are clear, there was a number of variables. One of the variables was the choice that parents could make, either remote or hybrid or in person, depending on what grade level you were in. There was also, though, accommodations for staff that's granted under a number of federal leave programs. And so that could be for health conditions, it could be for childcare considerations, or it could possibly be if there was a severe illness in the family. Those are kind of some of the leaves that we had to deal with as we kind of went through this. So you not only had to determine whether staff or students were coming back hybrid or in person, or remote or in person, and where staff was with that as well. So there's a couple of different variables that we had to kind of account for.
Just a couple, John.
Yeah. So, and then in the meantime, I'm also trying to keep the class sizes, so literally as we talked about measuring desks to see how many kids we can fit in the classroom. So in order to get the students back first grade through grade 5, we had to invest a great deal to be able to make that happen. And so kind of the question is, how do we pay for all that? So that's what we're going to talk about today. And so there's a lot of information here, and I'm going to kind of roughly go over this, and then Ryan can kind of dive into kind of the CRF monies in general. But basically, we got right around $1.5 million, a little bit more than that, from the COVID Relief Fund, which is a federal program. That's a great deal of money. One of the catches with the money, though, is that money had to be spent by December 30th. And so we couldn't say, look, we need to hire 16 teachers, and then the COVID relief money is going to pay for that for the entire school year. It really kind of broke the school year into parts. So basically, the COVID relief money, if we were going to hire a staff member, is approximately 40% of the school year. And so we could pay for part of that position with COVID money by about 40%. So if you figure it's a $60,000 position, 40% of $60,000 is what it would pay for. So we had to kind of pull from a number of different areas to be able to find the funding to do this. The next money is CARES money, which is an additional federal program that came through, and with the that federal program, we received $142,000 of that. The beauty of the CARES money is that we were able to spend that over basically almost 2 years. And so we had the flexibility to use that money to be able to carry over from one calendar year to the next calendar year. And then the last variable is our local money. And so how do we pay for things locally? And so we had to pull from all three of those pots to be able to bring this plan together. So as you look down the column here, you're going to see a number of different names. And some of these are new hires, and some of these are some additional teaching loads that are put on people. So if you see an FTE, that's a 1. Obviously, that's a new position. You're going to probably hear those names tonight. There are some 0.5s, which would be a person who may be half-time that we're bumping up to full-time. And then you see some 0.2s. And what does the 0.2 mean is that in the negotiated agreement with our teachers, if teachers teach above their teaching load, they get 1/5 of their salary to be able to do that. And so you're going to see on this list a number of math teachers that are involved in that. And part of that is that one of the issues that we struggled with in the middle school was the learners, the algebra and geometry for the 7th and 8th graders, basically. And so that was one of the ways that we were able to handle that. There was a real push with the math department feeling like they needed that time to cover the content in order to set those kids up for success when they got to the high school. There was some push from some people, I think, where they kind of felt like, what's the ramifications of the math program? But the reality is, when it comes to math, we have kids who have already started down a road with that. And so if you were to take that away from kids, it adversely affects them down the road. So what does that look like? So a student who, let's say, took algebra in 7th grade and then took geometry in 8th grade, has the potential really to be taking AP Stats, Calc BC as a senior. So if you're going to be an engineering major and to be able to take Calc BC, that's something that really is a strong piece of your resume. So if we were to take away those options from kids, there's an adverse effect for that down the road for those kids particularly. And so it was really important to find a way to do that. So that's where the 0.2 came from, just for clarity. You're going to see Dave Gratian is a 0.2, and you're going to see Dave Miller is a 0.2. So I know we'll talk about it a little bit later in the agenda, but Dave Miller has retired. And so unfortunately, Dave has just done a fantastic job with our music program, our band program, both the Great Works School and the middle school. And with that, we needed to find a way to make things work. And unfortunately, with the system that we have right now, between the remote and the hybrid at the middle school and high school, a half-time position really doesn't solve a lot of problems for us because it shuffles people around even more. So we had to get creative in how do we still keep kids that have a passion for band, interested in band, but at the same time do it in a way that makes the most sense. So band is also one of those things that they recommend that not be taught in school buildings themselves because of obviously the blowing of air is a 13-foot kind of window when air is expunged that they're being cautious of. People have to be heavier. And so what Dave is going to do is he's going to basically, for about 8 hours a week, he's going to work with those kids in the middle school individually. And so he's going to be able to create some times where they can work over Zoom, and be able to give those kids an opportunity. And then Dave Miller is going to do the same thing in the 5th grade at the Great Works School. The 4th grade band program is a little bit trickier because it's hard to start the 4th grade band program just in a totally remote environment. So we're going to try to get the 5th grade up and going first, and then we'll look at what makes sense with the 4th grade. But we did feel like with those 5th graders, they already made the investment in the instruments. We wanted to find a way to support that. So this is the way that we came up to do that. You'll also see some positions where they might say a person's name twice, and so that they were serving as an ed tech right now. They're a certified teacher, and so there's a 1-year position now where they'll be actually teaching a class this year. So like in Christy's case, we'll talk about her as we kind of talk about nominations, but Christy was a former teacher in the district, had been a librarian for a number of years, and so she's going to go back in the classroom for a year for us, which is, we're very fortunate to have that. And then as you kind of go down, you'll see kind of like, for instance, Vicki Stewart, who will be actually, it's been incredible to step up and help us with our pre-K and K remote program for those students, which is just a great addition to have. Vicki will be working with 2 ed techs, both of the buildings together, coordinate that program, which is huge. And then speech and language pathologist is a new position that's going in, and then also a possibility of a special education remote teacher, which we may need. We put that in the budget. We found a way to pay for it, but I'm just not sure with caseloads right now what that looks like. So we're still working some of those details out. And then again, Kathy Butler, you see that name twice. Kathy's currently an ed tech at the middle school. So that's kind of where the positions came from. So if you take the pink, and then you take the green, and the yellow, and the blue, those are all going to add up to the $1 million. Is that right, Ryan? All of those four, so in the pink, that's money that we saved. So that's local money that we saved. The green is from the CRF money, so it's about $377,000 from the CRF monies. The yellow is the CARES money, which is $142,000 roughly. And then the blue is kind of where money came from in our local budget. So that all those monies together equal the true cost of $1 million basically to get this. Down below that, how do we do that? And so we have the half-time French position at the middle school that we are not going to fill. We're going to be able to offer that French 1 position, classes for the 8th graders remotely. We had asked for a math interventionist position at the middle school right now, and just felt like right now with the class size numbers as low as they are going to be, to add a new program at the middle school will probably be a difficult transition, so we're going to take that money and put it towards keeping those class sizes down. We have that halftime pre-K position that's in reserve at the elementary school, the halftime ed tech position. We talked about having the 4 kind of part-time ed techs that would kind of do the small grouping for us. So we're going to have to use those monies to help pay for the local monies. The We the People money that we had talked about before, we didn't do that in the last couple of years, or the last 2 years, I think. So that's about $25,000 that's tied up into that. And so obviously, probably field trips right now are not going to be something that's going to be part of our repertoire, I guess. OWIN trips to nationals as well. Then we also have a person who's taking on the year leave of absence. And then there's also some local field trip money, so it's about $25,000 a year set aside for field trips. But I felt like it was safe to say that certainly for the first third of the year, we're not going to get any field trips, so we're able to take that money and save those monies right now. So when we're all said and done with the money that we kind of pulled from our local budget, we have the CARES money and the CRF money, we still have about $322 left, kind of as we kind of adjusted all of that. So that's just the staffing part of the CARES money, because obviously the CARES money was more than that. And Ryan can kind of go into a little bit more detail with what actually how the CARES money was spent.
Yep.
But do you have any questions about kind of what this piece of paper is telling us right now?
What can we do with the $300?
Yeah. We might be buying some textbooks, so we're holding on.
Incredibly thoughtful. A lot of work goes into this.
So fortunately, we did a lot of work in the spring when we had a conversation that there may be a curtailment. And so really when we had a curtailment piece, this is kind of where we started the conversation to kind of figure out like what, in the event of a curtailment, where would that money come from. So I will say we are extremely fortunate that we've been able to find a really quality group of people to come in and work with us. I mean, you don't want to do this and create a bigger problem. So if you're pulling people off the street to come do these jobs, and that's not solving any problem. And just really the quality of candidates we've had, some with some great experience, some alumni returning, fresh out of school, so it's a really nice balance. So that is I think, to me, it's a real positive. It says a lot about our district.
It's interesting to see the kids return, like Haley taught.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, what?
Absolutely.
A lot of these, a lot of the folks that are coming on, they're specifically 1 year.
That's correct.
So they understand that there's no guarantee.
That's
for any-
correct.
And that's okay.
That's correct. Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And then for them, it's a great
It's a
opportunity.
good resume
you know.
builder. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great.
So the only downfall that we're struggling with right now, and we've worked our way through it, is that a lot of these positions are people who are ed techs. And so it's great because we've got our people who kind of know our system, they're certified teachers, this is an opportunity, they're excited about it, and so we're going to protect their position for the next year. So if they take a 1-year position and help us out, then they can always fall back to the ed tech position.
Yeah.
But as you do that, it opens up a hole with the ed techs, and so now we need to try to find the fill those ed tech
Oh,
positions. So,
right.
and that process has been going on, but that's just, it's kind of, I think, all districts are kind of struggling with these same issues, so.
So that list is not final, probably, but.
No.
No. Okay.
And, obviously with the ed techs, it's a little bit different hiring process that,
Yeah.
that is becoming the board, so that makes it a little bit easier, for you guys. And that's why, just to be clear, it was important that we meet tonight because I've got these contracts out there and people are trying to get pulled up by other districts right now, so the quicker that we can get people locked in and committed to us, really the better off we're going to be. So, questions?
This is fantastic work.
Yeah, it's just, it's so straightforward and easy to understand, Ryan. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's amazing. I am not a spreadsheet person, and I understand this. That's huge. Thank you.
And this has been a juggling match. I mean, like, so like, this
Yeah.
is, and again, like, I know it's the details, but, you know, amongst everything else, it's like, how do you make things work? How do you teach, you know, students what the days are gonna look like? But this is also the, you know, the reality of how do you pay for this and create a system that's sustainable? And so, Ryan will share with you kind of the CRF money part of that, but like, part of that is us trying to find, you know, full-time subs that will be in the buildings every day. And so that there's a pool of people that are in the buildings. You know, obviously it's a little bit different than it being a regular sub, but it's not quite that same role as being a long-term sub, so it's kind of in the middle of those two things. But you have a body on site in the event that someone's ill. You guys only can step in on a moment's notice. So like, it's just, you're just trying to create those safety valves as much as you can in preparation of, we're not really sure what the year's going to look like when we do that. So.
Do we have a group of those people ready to
Every
go?
building we budgeted, every building had 2. And we pay, and when we did that, we budgeted that from September 1st to December 30th with the hopes that the federal government will have some additional monies to get through the rest of the school year. Then we'll have to see where we are with our
Are we finding those people or stepping
yeah,
up?
so right now, Ryan, we have 6 right now, is that right?
Yep.
6. I think in the high school there's a couple, you know, kind of that are in the works, so to speak. There's a couple of people that are part-time that are willing to kind of come in 2 days a week. If you pair those 2 people together, that would give you a kind of a full-time position. A couple of them
Is that enough? Is that many subs enough? I'm just asking
Yeah,
only
no.
because the community is listening right now,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
maybe there are people out there who might be willing to step up.
We need more subs, there's no
Okay,
question about
so
that.
we
So
need
we
more
have a
subs.
regular sub
Yeah.
pool, and we have a regular sub money, and then in addition to that, these are kind of like, you know, another 10 positions that will be treated a little bit differently. And again, the reality is some of those people who kind of run a regular sub pool now have been pulled to become
Right.
the, you know, the permanent sub,
Right.
so to speak. So, you know, there's going to need to be some.
So those are, permanent subs will be here every day?
Be here every day.
There is not a class for them?
That's correct. That's correct. And really, they're going to be your, you know, your emergency, you know, so-and-so is out today, head right down. So you kind of have something to start with before the day starts, just because one of the tricky parts is that we're going to ask students and staff before they walk in the building is there's kind of a self-assessment checklist that they have to do, and if they, you know, show
Right.
signs in a couple of those areas, then we ask them not to come to school. So obviously, the attendance rates are going to be a little bit different this year than they have been in the past. So.
Sure.
The hard part that we struggle with when it comes to substitutes is that typically a substitute works with, you know, Kittery, York, us, and Noble. And so there's 4 schools there that they kind of pull from. And so, you know, whoever gets called first wins, so to speak. And so that's a little bit of the tricky part. So that's why we felt like it was really important to kind of have those, you know, all hands on deck, so to speak. The other thing that I've asked the high school to do in particular is start to reach out to some of those students who maybe, you know, remote learning this year, and so there's, you know, former graduates who are a couple of years out who've been, you know, maybe taking classes at home. It's an opportunity to kind of come in and be able to, you know, to be a study hall monitor, to be, you know, a hall monitor for us, to be a recess monitor. It's this, you know, a chance to make some extra money with it as well. So
And good experience.
great experience, yes, particularly if you're in
No matter
education.
what you're majoring in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things why the one-year position is so attractive. If, you know, at this point, people don't have a job, maybe they're being in ed tech and skills much. A year in the classrooms, and when they apply for jobs next year, obviously, it's a great experience for them. They can grow, but it also gives them, you know, something to make their resume a little bit stronger in the future. So,
John, is there any thought to, like, if a teacher is a full remote teacher teaching the full remote students, if they need to be out, will they just sort of juggle the workload, or is there any sort of sub-plan if a full remote teacher needed to be?
yeah, we're going to have to use the subs in that way as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the beauty of the full remote person would be that, you know, even if they had to quarantine and they weren't ill, they would still be able to provide.
Right.
The tricky part would be if someone were ill, then we obviously would have to be able to get someone in place to be able to do that.
Okay.
So.
But you could have one of the people that's in the schools do that.
Yes.
Zoom teach.
Yeah, yeah.
So
That's the
this-
part about this year which is so different, is that there's a lot of variables out there, you know, and so being able to figure out how to make all of these things fit and be able to have enough contingency plans in place that, you know, if people do get, in Harvard, they could just have the regular flu. I mean, they take away COVID. I mean, so you're going to have people in and out, you know, and so that's really tricky, you know, and so one of the pieces that is not in this, but I just want to update you on, is that we are still waiting from the CDC for kind of our directive as how to handle if there were a positive case in the schools. And so I reached out to Eileen King, who is one of the executive directors of MSMA, Maine School Management, and just said, look, we're not comfortable opening schools until we have an idea of what this looks like. So we're in a really tough situation that, if you're telling us that we need to go create our own protocols, fine, let us go do that. But what I'm concerned about is that we're going to go do that, and then we're going to create them, and I'm going to present them to the community, and then 2 days later, the CDC is going to say, hey, wait a second, here's what you need to do. So I was told that Dr. Shaw, has the plan on his desk. He's meeting with his executive committee to be able to approve that plan, but it's been sitting there since this weekend, so I don't have the answer. So it's not that we don't know what to do if a child is ill, right? That's not the issue. The issue is who do we inform? How do we inform people? That those start to be kind of the trickle-down effects of like, what do you do, with a class of students if there was someone that was ill, like just giving us those real clear answers. I mean, we can make, our best medical guesses, based on kind of what we've seen kind of other people do, but we're really waiting for that to come. So Eileen reached out to Kelly DeVoe, who's I believe she's the executive secretary for the commissioner. And the commissioner, Kelly DeVoe, said, absolutely do not create your own plan. One's coming. Do not do that, because whatever we do is going to supersede what you do. So do not create your own plan.
Okay.
So, which is good, but
Come on now.
it's coming, right?
Yeah.
That's the and one of the things that Eileen kind of said is that I know you're anxious trying to get this, as a lot of people are, but just think of Worcester County, who's back in school right now. They still don't have that plan. And so they said, well, okay, well, I guess it gives you some perspective on how other people must feel. But just so so it is out there. That's not. That's an important piece for us. You know what I mean? And we've had great questions from the community about it. And it's not that we don't know what to do if someone's not feeling well, but the issue is like, what can we share?
Right.
How does that work? And so do you treat every illness as it's COVID? So if someone has a stomach ache, do you treat everybody like they have COVID? Which the answer to that appears to be no.
Right.
They don't have COVID until they do have COVID.
Right.
Or do you treat everybody who's ill like it is COVID? Like, so there's two different mindsets when you're managing this. And so they need to give us that clarity. Like, what can we tell families? So where's that HIPAA violation of, so for instance, we can't even today, 10 years ago, if someone had not bring a license in the classroom, we used to be able to send a letter home and say, hey, here you go. Someone, then you would never say who it was, but there's an outbreak of license in the classroom, please check your child. That can't even happen anymore. That's now against the law.
What do you do now if someone has
I remember seeing that letter actually come
Yeah.
from.
I've
Yeah,
gotten
years ago,
that
yeah,
multiple
absolutely.
times.
And it's all
Like,
changed.
thank goodness.
So again, it's like, it's counterintuitive that you think
It just is.
So what do you do now? Nothing?
they can't do anything. Yeah.
Which is
it's-
So it
the
just
kids
keeps
vote.
spreading, and that doesn't solve
And that was the
anything.
pushback
That's
from the school
just-
nurses, and so
that's just
that's
ridiculous.
been a real adjustment, and that's the line that we're trying to understand right now.
Yeah.
This is a pandemic, and so
Yeah.
what does logic tell you? And sometimes logic isn't necessarily correlate with what the practice needs to be sometimes, and so that's why it's just, I want to make sure that we have the right information before we send the plan out. This is not the thing that we want to say, hey, here's what we think, and then all of a sudden,
Yeah, no.
And so what I said though, is I felt like they needed to hear clearly that not making a decision is a decision. So them not sending information out is a decision in its own right. And so it makes people question like what we're doing as a district, and that's not fair.
No.
This is important for us to have.
It's a trust issue, yeah.
So again, I would expect it to be this week. So we'll see. So, but just I want to give you a quick update on that.
Thank you for that.
Ryan, you just kind of want to share kind of just big picture, like how we spent the CRF money?
Yep. So, the budget that you have in front of you is our preliminary budget. The state has said that we can present two budgets. We can do a preliminary and we have to do a final. The final budget is due September 30th. Typically with federal grants, we have a 10%, by cost category. You can overrun 10% kind of between the categories. In this particular grant, it is to the penny. So there is no leeway to like overexpend one category and underexpend a different category. Like it all has to be accounted for. The state's also requiring us to send copies of every single receipt, whether it's for $3 or for $100,000, along with copies of the checks. So it's definitely got a lot of rules attached to it, just to kind of be aware of that. So these are all estimates. We haven't even started spending some of this money yet. A lot of the staff money hasn't been spent yet. we're going to do the best we can to try to get those numbers as close as we can because we have to spend that money in those categories. You'll notice the first column, that says salaries and benefits. That is a lot more money than the sheet that John shared with you. Other things that we have budgeted there, we have the 6 full-time substitutes. Those aren't on that list that John shared with you. We also have a full-time substitute nurse that we're trying to hire. So if one of our nurses is sick or out, we can cover that. We have a lot of staff that were involved this summer.
Frank, can you hold on for 1 second? Just with the nurses as well, one of the things that we're finding statewide is that people are behind in the vaccinations as well. And so we're trying to be able to get that full-time nurse in here to be able to free up
Yeah.
Judy to be able to kind of coordinate some vaccinations district-wide, because obviously people are 6 months behind now and those types of things. So, sorry, Ryan, but it's,
Nope, no
that's
problem.
also
Yeah.
part of
Including flu shots. and-
Correct,
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
correct.
Go ahead, sorry.
Nope. So I know at the last board meeting, John shared that giant list of all those people that were involved in kind of helping to build that reopening framework. So we have money set aside in the CR money to help pay some of those like teachers and staff that were involved and spent a lot of extra hours doing
Good.
that.
I'm excited to
Nice.
hear
Good.
that.
Good.
That's
Yes.
great. I was wondering about
I
that.
was feeling bad for her.
So we have a half-time custodial position budgeted at the Great Works School for about $10,000. We hired an additional bus driver. We had 2 in the budget. Right now, we only have been able to fill 1, but we were able to get an extra bus driver. And then there's a couple things that we're doing at the high school that were new and due to COVID, is trying to get some additional lunch monitors. So generally, we can put half the kids and they go down to the cafeteria and have lunch. So you can have a few adults in there and it's okay. We're going to have to spread the kids around all over the high school at lunch. They're not all going to go in the cafeteria. So to have adults cover all those different places, we're going to hire 4 lunch monitors to be able to do that. Same thing at the high school with study halls. So again, you could put a bunch of kids in the cafeteria and have a couple study hall monitors. We're going to need to spread those students out throughout the school in classrooms probably. So we're going to have 6 additional study hall monitors. So all of that additional staffing is added into the number that John shared with you. So that's how we get to that $627,000 number.
Yep. And all of that has to be spent by December 31st.
That is correct. All of that
Yeah.
money is budgeted, these positions are
Yep.
September through December. So
Yep.
they were advertised as such, September through December. And then if we, as John said, if we were able to get some more federal dollars that kind of covered the second half of the year, we kind of extended people at that point. So the contracted services column, which is the next column over, as John talked about, we're going to have someone from Sweetser working with us and staff on the trauma-informed instruction. So we're going to pay for that. We had to pay for a service since March to run our office phones for the folks that were working remotely. There were mobile hotspots that were purchased. Those were from March to June and then again September through December. So students can access remote instruction. There's a couple online learning platforms, MobiMax, G Suite, so that makes up that $45,000. Materials and supplies and books is kind of like the catch-all. This is kind of like, we spent all the other money and then said, this is what we have left. That's what we're going to spend on student supplies and PPE.
Yep.
So there's a lot of little tiny things in there, but I don't want to give you too much detail.
So for example, like one of the things that we are doing with that is that grades 1 through 5, students will all get their own pencil boxes. And so they'll have, an eraser, pencils, crayons, markers in the box so that we don't have to share. I mean, so it's just like just trying to think ahead, like what are those things that may be faster in the classroom to be able to minimize that type of content. So,
Another thing we did with that money, John, is we did the back-to-school kits for all the staff. So basically, every staff member is going to receive a gift bag that has 50 disposable masks, a face shield, hand sanitizer, hand wipes, lotion. So it's every staff member gets one of those when they come back. So like that's just another example of things we're doing with that money.
Are laptops being provided for grades 1 through 3 or K through 3?
Technology will be, yep. We're working on kind of what the plan is going to be. That's part of some of the technology money that's going to be spent here as well. Yep.
So equipment is another large category. So the first line there is buses and vans. So we purchased, I don't know if you're familiar with the Hop van. I think we took that Hop van for a ride for some of the schools. We bought a second one of those. So we have 2 of the Ford Transit vans. And we also bought a Dodge Caravan. Those are for special ed runs. That was about $53,000. We purchased 2 brand-new buses, a transit bus and a regular bus, for $213,000. And that was to help spread the students out on the buses. We purchased 7 event tents, which John had mentioned before. That was $160,000, including concrete barriers to put around the tents to help weight them down and to prevent anybody from kind of like driving through them. We purchased 6 Connex boxes that were going to be basically 1 per school, and then we bought 1 additional one to store the tents in when we're not able to use the tents. And that is to help, as you see in this room, there's generally a lot of tables and things in here. That stuff all has to get removed from the school, and we need places to put it. So it's basically a large shipping container that we're going to be able to store outside and move some of the stuff that's in the building out of the building, so there's space. We spent about $20,000. We built a whole new classroom at the Great Works School. So the old band room has been turned into an additional classroom to help spread the students out. You'll see there's about $3,400 for equipment related to nutrition. That's for a food warmer here. Like I said, not all the food will be served in the cafeteria, so we need another warmer to be able to keep the food warm in different parts of the building. And then the last big piece was the iPads, which is technology. So we're going to purchase about 150 iPads, and that is for our students that are doing remote instruction in kindergarten. So they'll have a device that they can have at home. We only have about, I think, 70 students remotely in kindergarten, but we wanted to have the additional 70 if we do end up fully remote at some point, that we have the devices to send home to those kindergarten students.
With protected cases, though.
They did come with cases.
I think one 2 days.
Any questions about the CRF monies? What we're doing?
Did we get any increase in the number of families that need the mobile hotspots?
We have,
September from...
no, we have not done that yet. So
Okay.
that will be that first week, that first 2 weeks of school. So
Right.
remember, I think it's interesting that some districts you're seeing now kind of starting to back off on that September 8th. Is they push the date back to September 8th and they're backing off again. And I think what we're going to stick with is that we're doing that soft opening.
Yep.
Start to get the routines around, and so, like for instance here at the high school, we've got to be able to get kids in here, see how things go, and if we have to make adjustments, we want to do it quickly and with a small group of people, and so that gives us an opportunity to get that feedback right away. And so that first week is really going to be about slowing things down, teaching kids habits. There's going to be some nervousness for staff, there's going to be some nervousness for students, and so that's really important. Elementary school will be more so the 9 days, but just that's part of that planning as we kind of are going to have to adjust. Like that's kind of our next jump, is to get those routines done. So like walking in this high school is going to be very different than it was a year ago. There's no way around that. So, any other questions? And so I think it kind of gives you a sense of we're trying to do a lot of things and just kind of keeping. I feel good about the infrastructure we have in place right now. I think we're as prepared as we can be, as we're as prepared as financially.